What monks ate to awaken their minds? That sounded like a catchy headline when I first scribbled it in the margin of a notebook. But the more I poked at it, the less I wanted it to be a punchline, and the more I wanted it to be a map. Not a map to enlightenment overnight, not a secret menu that solves everything, but a set of small, repeatable choices about food and ritual that gently steady attention and free up mental space. I'm not claiming miracles. I'm telling a story of dissatisfaction, experiments, and a subtle change that shifted the way I noticed my life. A few months back, I was living the beige version of a full life. Decent job, cramped apartment, a neighbor who loved late-night construction sounds, and a commute lined with people who shouted into their phones like there was no tomorrow. My mornings were scrambled, lunches rushed, and by mid-afternoon, I'd be the kind of person who could lose a whole hour to searching for the perfect playlist while my brain said, "Do the work." There was a flatness to my attention, like someone had turned down the dimmer on everything that used to be interesting. One morning, after another sleepless night because of the neighbor's drill, I found myself standing in the kitchen with instant coffee and a slice of toast, staring at a book about monastic life that had somehow fallen into my cart on a whim. The chapter title was simple: Food as Ritual. It wasn't mystical. It described monks, in many traditions, choosing plain, steady foods and simple rhythms that minimize distraction. The idea lingered like steam from my coffee. What if the first thing I put in my body each day didn't fuel my reactivity, but steadied my attention? So I decided to try something obvious and modest. No vows, no robes, just a small food and ritual experiment inspired by practices that are commonly reported in monastic communities. Simpler breakfasts, a deliberate tea ritual, walking to work when possible, and a short, quiet pause before the first sip or bite. I did it for a week, then 2, then longer. The changes weren't dramatic fireworks. They were slow and cumulative. My mornings became less like a sprint and more like an opening. My reactions at work softened. I noticed details again. That's what awakening the mind looked like for me. Clarity, steadiness, and the space to choose. If you like practical experiments for a clearer mind, subscribe. I'll keep sharing simple, testable habits like this. Here's how it began. The first week was mostly about changing the first 30 minutes of the day. Instead of gulping coffee and scrolling through notifications while dressing, I set my alarm 15 minutes earlier. I put a kettle on, walked to the park nearby, and sat on a bench with a small thermos of tea. No headphones, no podcast. Just the park, a vendor pushing a cart of muffins and biscotti in the distance, and the heat of the mug warming my hands. I made the first sip a moment. Breathe. Notice the temperature. Tilt the cup. Take one mindful sip. 1 minute of quiet before the day pushed in. How is this monk-inspired? In many traditions, monks set aside simple rituals to mark transitions and to bring attention into the present. Food, especially the first intake after a night of fasting, is often treated as an event to be honored rather than rushed. That doesn't make it holy. It makes it useful. The pause gives your nervous system a chance to reset, and the simple food minimizes digestive disturbance. In my case, the park bench and slow tea were my version of the monastery's early-day simplicity. What monks ate, again, commonly reported across various traditions and not universal, tends to be plain and digestible. Think simple porridges, congee, whole grain porridge with fruit, light soups, legumes, plain rice, and uncomplicated vegetable broths. Green tea or mild herbal infusions show up a lot. Caffeine isn't always banned, but many communities favor moderation and a mindful approach to stimulants. The point is regularity and minimal sensory distraction from the meal itself. When your breakfast is predictable and gentle on digestion, your energy across the morning becomes steadier. It's not magic. It's biology meeting ritual. Fewer spikes, fewer crashes, and a less restless mind. I'll give you a concrete iteration of what I did, because that's where most people get stuck. Start with the first 30 minutes. Wake up 15 to 30 minutes earlier than usual. Put on a jacket and walk 5 to 10 minutes to a quiet spot or the nearest small park. Heat water and prepare a simple infusion: green tea, mild black tea, or an herbal blend. If you're into coffee, make it a smaller ritual cup rather than a big gulp. Sit. Breathe. For 60 to 90 seconds, hold the cup in your hands and take one slow, mindful sip. No phone, no mental checklist. Walk to work at a calm pace, or if you work from home, take a quiet 5 to 10 minute walk around the block before starting your day. That's it. No extremes, no long fasting sentences or precise recipes, just a rhythm. The food choices that follow can be simple. A small bowl of whole grain porridge with a little fruit, or a plain rice congee with a few steamed vegetables, or a small bowl of beans and rice if you prefer something more savory. I alternated between a warm bowl of porridge and a light miso soup. Both sit well with me and don't provoke the mid-morning slump. You might ask, why does plain porridge help? Again, not a miracle claim, just a practical observation and a commonly reported advantage. Whole grain porridges release energy slowly, which can reduce the peaks and troughs of focus. They're also easy to digest, so your body spends less energy on digestion and more on thought. Combine that with a pause, the mindful sip before the meal, and you've got a small habit that signals your brain, we're settling, attention is being called. I remember a Tuesday afternoon where the change became noticeable in a way I didn't expect. In the office, there was always one guy, let's call him Sam, who loved long lunches and longer conversations. He would tell stories and ask the same questions in the same theatrical way. Before the experiment, those lunches would drain me. I'd leave my desk mid-morning feeling fragile and then get overwhelmed by small interruptions. After 2 weeks of the park tea start and a simple breakfast, I was calmer in the middle of the day. When Sam launched into a 3-act saga about his weekend, I was present, polite, and able to disengage without guilt. My energy wasn't gone. It was allocated. The difference wasn't dramatic, but it was unmistakable. Small rituals like these do more than reduce stress. They change your relationship to attention. Instead of trying to seize focus when it's nowhere to be found, you prime your system for it. That's one of the core lessons I borrowed from accounts of monks' diets. Simplicity frees cognitive bandwidth. When you aren't negotiating a complicated breakfast, when your caffeine isn't surging and crashing, your mind experiences fewer interruptions. That gives you space to notice how you really feel, and crucially, to choose. Now, a brief historical qualifier. Monastic diets vary widely across cultures and time. In some traditions, monks ate very little. In others, they had access to richer fare depending on donations and local crops. What tends to be common across many contexts is an emphasis on plainness, regularity, and intentionality. The why varies: religious discipline, humility, or practical concerns like limited resources. But the outcome often reported is similar: steadier attention and fewer distractions. I'm borrowing that outcome, not asserting a universal rule. If you're wondering how strict you need to be, the answer is, not strict at all. The point of trying monk-inspired eating is experimentation. I didn't become a vegetarian or start meditating for hours. I swapped agitation for intentionality in small, sustainable ways. If the idea of congee sounds unappealing, choose oatmeal, or even a piece of whole grain toast with an egg. What matters is the combination of simple, steady food with a little ritual that signals your brain it's time to be present. Let's structure this into a practical 7-day challenge you can try. I'll give one version for people with tight schedules and one for those with a bit more time. 7-day monk-inspired challenge. Simple version. Day 1. Wake up 15 minutes earlier. Make one mindful sip of tea or coffee before any screen. Walk for 5 minutes. Day 2. Swap your usual breakfast for a simple bowl of whole grain porridge or a small rice-based meal. Keep the mindful sip. Day 3. Add a 60-90-second silence before your first bite where you breathe and set an intention for the morning. Day 4. Reduce late-night eating. No food within 90 minutes of bedtime, if that's safe for you. Day 5. Continue the morning routine and add a 10-minute mindful walk during lunch. Day 6. Try a light vegetable soup or broth for lunch. Day 7. Reflect. Spend 5 minutes writing down what you noticed over the week: energy, mood, focus. Pick one habit to keep. 7-day monk-inspired challenge, expanded version. Day 1. Wake up 20 to 30 minutes earlier. Prepare a simple porridge or congee. Take a mindful sip before the first bite. Walk to the park if possible. Day 2. Repeat. Day 1. Add a 5-minute silent stretch before leaving home. Day 3. Keep the morning routine. At lunch, choose a single light dish, a small bowl of broth or a salad with legumes. Day 4. Replace one snack with a piece of fruit or a handful of nuts. Practice the mindful bite ritual. Pause, breathe, taste. Day 5. Extend the morning walk to 15 minutes or add a short meditative breathing session after your tea. Day 6. Try a short intermittent fasting window. Nothing on the night snack you usually have. Only if it's safe for you. Day 7. Review. Write down practical changes and decide which one you'll keep for the next month. A crucial note: if you have medical conditions, diabetes, are pregnant, or have dietary restrictions, consult your healthcare provider before making changes like fasting or major shifts in carbohydrate intake. These suggestions are gentle experiments for generally healthy adults, not medical prescriptions. Alongside the food and morning ritual, I introduced 2 other monk-inspired practices that helped more than I expected: reducing background noise and creating predictable meal windows. Noise is one of those invisible taxations on attention. My neighbor's late-night drill was a literal example, but so was the constant, low-level hum of office chat and message pings. In many monastic settings, there's an intentional silence, or at least a scheduled quiet time. You don't need to replicate monastic silence to benefit. Simply choose one stretch during your day where you minimize audio stimulation. For me, that meant turning off non-essential notifications until after morning email, using noise-canceling earbuds for commute noise, and scheduling a no-meeting hour in the afternoon if possible. Predictable meal windows are another practical habit. Monks often eat at set times, which creates a rhythm for the body. When your feeding times are regular, you reduce the chaotic spikes of hunger and the anxious scramble for whatever's available. I started aiming for 3 modest meals with one small snack if needed, rather than grazing all day. That steadiness allowed me to maintain focus and avoid the sugar and crash cycle that used to sabotage my afternoons. There's a social element to all this, too. Eating simply can feel lonely in a world that equates lavish food with celebration. But monks also eat communally in many traditions, and that shared eating is part of the ritual. You don't need a monastery dinner hall to get the benefit. Share a quiet lunch with a colleague who's open to a slower pace, or invite a friend for a simple soup and slow conversation. These rituals work best when they aren't lonely austerities. They're invitations to presence. Now, the real test came when the boss hired his nephew. It sounds small and petty, but it was the moment I'd been stewing about in the margins. Favoritism, casual disrespect, and a slow erosion of the sense that my work mattered. Before the experiment, that situation would have triggered email storms and sleepless nights. After a few months of monk-inspired habits, I found a different response. I still felt frustrated, understandably, but I had more bandwidth to plan. Instead of reacting, I took a week to notice, then a month to plan. I used the clarity from those early mornings and the steadying breakfasts to draft a small freelancing pitch I'd been drifting toward for years. Within 2 months, I had a second income stream and was less attached to the office politics. The foods and rituals didn't solve the problem. They gave me enough calm to see options and act. When I tell that story, I don't mean to imply that a bowl of porridge will fix an unjust workplace. That would be absurd. What I'm pointing to is the interplay of internal work and external action. When your internal state is slightly steadier, when your mornings are predictable and your energy is less volatile, you can take more effective actions. The monk's approach isn't about escaping the world. It's about meeting it with a clearer head. Here are some practical meal ideas and variations you can try, none of them prescriptive and all safely flexible. Simple bowl: whole grain porridge, oats, barley, or millet, cooked with water or plant milk, finished with a small amount of fruit or a sprinkle of nuts. Gentle on digestion, good slow energy. Rice congee: plain rice cooked into a soft porridge, topped with steamed greens or a light drizzle of soy sauce if you like savory. Common in many Asian monastic settings. Light soup: vegetable broth with soft cooked vegetables and a few legumes or barley. Keeps the stomach calm and provides fluids. Legumes and grains: a small portion of rice with lentils or beans, seasoned simply with herbs, filling without being heavy. Tea ritual: green tea or a mild herbal infusion. Sip slowly. Make the first minute a mindful pause. If caffeine is a concern, moderate your intake. Many monastic traditions use stimulant drinks sparingly. If coffee is part of your routine, try reducing the quantity and savoring a smaller cup or alternating with tea. The goal is mindful use, not eradication. You might wonder about the science. I'm not a scientist in this video. What I have are first-hand observations, widely reported benefits of steady meals, and the common-sense fact that less digestive disruption often correlates with steadier energy. Some people will find these habits dramatically helpful, others will notice little. That's fine. The experiment is about personal data. Try it, notice, adapt. Let me walk you through how to make the morning tea practice feel like a habit you'll actually keep. Start with environmental cues. Put your teacup on the counter before bed. Set the kettle where you will see it in the morning. Place your shoes by the door so the 5-minute walk is frictionless. If you use a kettle that whistles, great. Let that sound be a positive cue rather than a stressor. The small, visible setup reduces decision fatigue. Next, keep the food simple enough that you don't need a cookbook. For porridge, a basic recipe is 1 part whole grain to 3 or 4 parts water, simmered until soft. Season with a little salt or a teaspoon of honey if you need sweetness. For congee, use a higher water ratio and cook longer until the rice breaks down. For soup, start with a vegetable stock cube or a bag of pre-made stock and throw in chopped vegetables and lentils. These are not culinary masterpieces, they're practical fuel. Another practical tip: do the mindful sip before your phone. This is simple and transformative. Our phones are engineered to capture our attention. Handing them your first moments hands the day to someone else's algorithms. The mindful sip is a tiny sovereignty, a claim that your morning starts with you. It's also worth mentioning cravings and social pressure. People will ask why you're eating something plain or why you're not meeting for a loud brunch. You can be honest and casual. I'm trying a little experiment to see if simpler mornings help my focus. Most people will nod and go back to their own rituals. The small social friction is worth the internal clarity. As the weeks went by, I started paying attention to the texture of the day, the clarity after the mindful sip, the reduced reactivity when Sam launched into another long lunch story, the softer response to the boss's favoritism. I didn't become monastic. I went out with friends. I drank celebratory cocktails and ate at restaurants. The point was balance. Monastic practices aren't moral shaming, they're useful tools. If monks commonly chose plain, regular foods to steady attention, then anyone can borrow that logic. Simplicity and ritual reduce cognitive noise. A question that often comes up: what about fasting? Some monastic traditions include fasting as a discipline. I approached fasting cautiously. Shorter fasting windows can reduce late-night eating and improve sleep for some people, but they're not suitable for everyone. If you're considering a fasting window, start small, delay your first meal by an hour, or skip a late-night snack. Notice how your energy behaves. If you have medical conditions, discuss it with a professional. The principle is again not deprivation, but rhythm, predictable times for eating and not eating. Another habit I adopted was the mindful lunch. Instead of eating at my desk between emails, I tried to make one meal a deliberate pause. 10 minutes of sitting, breathing, and tasting food without the screen transformed how much I enjoyed my food and how full I felt afterward. You don't need to convert all meals into ceremonies. The monk-like suggestion is to pick one meal, especially at the start of the day, to be intentional. Over time, a surprising consequence emerged: decision clarity. Not because my life simplified magically, but because small, consistent choices reduced daily friction. When you eliminate debates over breakfast every day, you save a sliver of decision energy that compounds. That energy can be used for creative work, serious conversations, or planning an exit strategy from an unsatisfying job. Those are the practical payoffs. I want to emphasize humility here. I am not saying monks have cornered wisdom or that their diets are perfect for everyone. I'm saying their emphasis on simple, regular food and ritual is a helpful lens. If you practice it, you might notice small shifts. You might not. Either outcome is informative. The challenge is about curiosity and self-experimentation, not conversion. Before I close, I'll give a few troubleshooting tips for common problems people report. I get hungry mid-morning. Consider adding a bit more protein or a small handful of nuts to your breakfast. Try a slightly larger portion of whole grains or a boiled egg. If hunger persists, evaluate whether your evening meal was too light. I don't have a park nearby. No problem. Sit in your kitchen, step outside to the front stoop, or even stand at the window with your cup and breathe. The location is less important than the pause. My job makes early mornings impossible. Start smaller. Try a mindful sip right after your usual alarm time without changing the wake-up hour. Or reserve the ritual for lunch instead of morning. I dislike porridge. Choose a savory option: a soft-boiled egg and toast, a small bowl of rice or soup. The texture matters less than the simplicity. I tried this for a week and felt nothing. Give it time. Habits compound. Try the 7-day challenge again, or pick one component to keep for a month. Now, to return to the title, What Monks Ate to Awaken Their Minds. The short, honest answer is simple, regular, and intentionally prepared foods combined with rituals that brought attention into the present. The longer answer is, those choices created conditions that allowed attention to work better. That's a non-mystical awakening, a practical one. It's less about transcendent experience and more about being less distracted, more present, and therefore more capable of meaningful decisions. If you're interested in trying this, here's a condensed checklist you can put on your fridge. 7-day monk-inspired checklist. 1. Wake 15-30 minutes earlier, if possible. 2. Prepare a simple morning cup, tea, small coffee. 3. Take a 60-90 second mindful pause before the first sip, bite. 4. Choose one simple breakfast: porridge, congee, small soup, or whole grain with fruit. 5. Walk for 5 to 15 minutes before starting work. 6. Schedule one no-phone meal per day. 7. Reflect for 5 minutes on day 7 and choose one habit to keep. If you try this for a week, please comment below with one change you noticed, even if it's tiny. Did you sleep a bit better? Did a meeting feel less overwhelming? Did you suddenly have the clarity to draft an email you'd been avoiding? I care about the small human data points. One last practical reminder. If you have dietary restrictions, medical conditions, or are on medication that requires certain timing around food, check with a healthcare professional before changing meal patterns or attempting fasting. Safety first. Monks didn't eat like kings, and that's part of the point. The modesty of the menu cleared space for attention. For me, that modesty translated into minutes of quiet that accumulated into resilience. The neighbor still sawed, and the boss still sometimes made bewildering choices, but my mornings stopped fueling my reactivity. They started fueling my capacity. If this resonates, Try the 7-day monk-inspired checklist, and then come back and tell me one thing you noticed. I'll share a downloadable checklist in the description that you can print or save. Try it, adapt it, and remember, awakening here is not a spectacle. It's a series of small, consistent invitations to show up differently.